Have you ever wondered what you'd do if you were faced with a stranger's desperate hope? If you saw someone, or something, so lost and cold that turning away would haunt you forever? That's exactly where Jamie Bennett found herself one biting afternoon on a snow-choked highway in Montana, her breath fogging up the windshield of her battered old truck as she counted down the miles to nowhere. Montana in December wasn't just cold. It was a living, breathing wall of white and silence, a world where the wind could carve loneliness into your bones. Jamie had spent hours lost in thought, her camera riding shotgun, her heart heavy with memories she'd rather outrun. She'd driven these roads 100 times before, but today everything felt different, like the universe was holding its breath. It happened in a blink. 1 second, the world was just snow and pine trees. The next, a flash of movement. Jamie slammed on the brakes, tires skidding over black ice as a shape darted across the road. The truck fishtailed. Her heart pounded. She gripped the wheel, knuckles white, and barely stopped in time. For a moment, all she could hear was her own heartbeat. Out in the swirling snow, a gaunt German shepherd stood, legs shaking, ribs showing beneath a ragged coat. Beside her, half buried in a drift, was a tiny puppy, no bigger than Jamie's boot, shivering violently. The mother's eyes locked onto Jamie's, wild, amber, pleading. There was nothing threatening about her, just desperation. Jamie's breath caught. The old voice in her head, a stubborn echo from her recent heartbreak, whispered, "Don't get involved. Don't risk it. People let you down, and so will dogs." She hesitated, hand frozen on the door handle, remembering how it felt to be left behind. But as the wind howled, the mother dog let out a soft, keening whimper that cut through every wall Jamie had built around her heart. She couldn't turn away. Not this time. Shoving the truck into park, Jamie grabbed her wool scarf and stepped out. The cold hit her like a slap, stealing her breath. Snow stung her cheeks. Each step toward the dogs was a battle with fear, not of the animals, but of caring again, of letting something fragile into her life when she still hadn't patched up her own wounds. "Hey there, girl," she called softly, voice trembling more than she'd admit. The shepherd braced herself between Jamie and the puppy, growling low, not with anger, but with terror. Jamie crouched, kept her hands visible, and tried to remember every trick for building trust she'd learned on past wildlife shoots. The puppy's breaths were shallow, and it barely moved. Jamie's heart squeezed. She pulled off her scarf and, moving slowly, wrapped the tiny body as gently as she could. The puppy didn't resist. Too cold, too weak. The mother, desperate and limping on one hind leg, pressed close, her eyes never leaving Jamie's. "It's okay," Jamie whispered, voice breaking. "I won't hurt you, I promise." With the puppy cradled against her chest, Jamie edged backward toward the truck. The mother hesitated, then, as if deciding to risk it all, limped after. For one breathless moment, Jamie thought the dog would bolt. Instead, she pressed her muzzle into Jamie's leg, eyes searching for hope. Jamie bundled both dogs into the cab, brushing snow from their fur. The truck, old and stubborn, coughed to life as she slammed the door. Inside, the warmth was a miracle. Jamie wiped her eyes, trying to hide tears from nobody. The mother pressed close to the puppy, nuzzling her baby as Jamie checked for injuries. She didn't know what came next. The nearest vet was miles away, and the storm was growing teeth. But Jamie knew this. She couldn't just drive away. She couldn't go back to pretending that people and dogs didn't need each other. As the snow thickened, Jamie looked in the rearview mirror. The highway behind her was empty, erased by the storm. Ahead, there was only uncertainty. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone. The mother dog, who Jamie would soon name Luna, curled around her puppy. Jamie reached out, her hand trembling, and Luna allowed it, just for a second. The puppy's tiny chest fluttered with each breath, and Jamie wrapped her jacket around both of them. They sat in the quiet for a moment, three souls bound by fear, hope, and the blinding white of a Montana blizzard. Jamie stared into the mother's eyes, so full of pleading, so brave despite everything. She made a silent vow, the kind that changes lives. "I'll get you through this. We'll get each other through." She put the truck in gear, glancing once more at the shivering bundle beside her. Outside, the world was cold and dangerous. But inside, for the first time in months, there was the faintest flicker of warmth, a promise that maybe, just maybe, saving someone else could save her too. The road ahead was uncertain, but Jamie drove on, not just for the dogs, but for herself. And in that simple, impossible moment, everything began to change. The storm did not let up. By the time Jamie steered her truck off the highway and onto the winding dirt road that led to her cabin, the world outside had gone completely white. The windshield wipers struggled against the thick snow, and headlights barely pierced the swirling flakes. Every so often, Jamie glanced at the bundle on her passenger seat, her faded scarf swaddling the puppy, the mother's anxious eyes never leaving her pup's side. The air in the cab was thick with fear and hope, the kind of hope so fragile that one wrong move might shatter it for good. Jamie's hands shook as she unlocked the door to her small, cedar-scented cabin. She kicked the snow off her boots and called softly, "Come on, girl. It's okay. This way." Luna hesitated, standing guard over the bundle. Jamie knelt, letting the dogs see her hands. The puppy's breathing was shallow, barely a flicker. Luna's entire body trembled with tension, ready to bolt at the slightest threat. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, making the whole place feel even more isolated. Jamie moved slowly, coaxing Luna and the puppy inside. The warmth hit them first, a rush of blessed air from the fireplace, still smoldering from that morning. Jamie tossed extra logs onto the fire, the orange glow flickering over the weathered wooden floors and the battered couch piled high with throw blankets. It was hardly luxurious, but to Luna and her pup, it was salvation. Jamie found an old dog bed she'd kept from when her childhood beagle visited. She never had the heart to throw it out, even after her breakup, even after all the dreams she'd buried. She arranged it close to the fire and set the puppy down, wrapped tight in the scarf. Luna hovered, refusing to eat the kibbles Jamie poured into a bowl. Her attention was fixed entirely on her puppy, every muscle straining to keep him alive. Jamie watched, anxiety pressing into her chest like a stone. She tried to remember what the vet had told her years ago. Warmth, slow sips of water, gentle hands. She found a dropper in her first aid kit and offered water, but the puppy was too weak to swallow. Its tiny body convulsed with shivers, and Jamie's hands shook as she tucked another blanket over him. Luna whimpered, pacing tight circles, her eyes wild with panic every time Jamie got too close. "Easy. I'm not going to hurt him," Jamie murmured. Her own voice startled her. How raw and scared it sounded. She remembered nights alone after her fiancé left, the echo of an empty house, the temptation to stop caring about anything at all. She recognized that same terror in Luna's eyes, the desperate urge to protect what little love was left. Jamie sat on the cold floor, pulling the dog bed closer to the fire. She draped her old down jacket over both dogs, ignoring the growing ache in her back. Luna watched her, unmoving, only her eyes darting from Jamie to her puppy and back again. The storm battered the windows, and Jamie realized how thin the walls felt, how fragile the world inside this cabin truly was. Suddenly, in the distant dark beyond the glass, a chorus of coyotes began to howl. Luna's ears perked up, body going rigid. The puppy whimpered, a thin, hopeless sound. Jamie's heart hammered. She knew how close she'd come to passing them by, how easy it would have been to pretend she hadn't seen anything at all, to let the wild take its course. She imagined the story ending differently. An abandoned dog, a life lost to winter, no one to notice, no one to care. But here they were, clinging to warmth and the barest thread of trust. Jamie tried again with the food, breaking up soft pieces of boiled chicken. Luna sniffed, then jerked back. She would not eat, not until her puppy was safe. Jamie sighed and set the bowl aside. Her own stomach twisted with worry. The hours crawled by. The only sound was the fire, the wind, and the ragged breaths of the puppy fighting for life. Jamie stroked the little one's back, whispering nonsense and prayers, the kind of words people say when there's nothing left to do but hope. At some point, Luna edged closer. Jamie held her breath as the mother nosed the puppy, then, hesitantly, looked up at Jamie with wide, haunted eyes. It was not trust yet, not forgiveness. It was a desperate bargain. Help him, and I'll let you close. Jamie swallowed, blinking back tears, and reached out her hand. Luna sniffed Jamie's palm, then licked it, quick, anxious, but unmistakably seeking something more than just survival. The puppy's breathing was uneven, sometimes stopping altogether. Jamie's panic spiked every time the little chest fell still. She pressed the pup gently against her chest, willing her own warmth into the tiny body. For the first time in months, Jamie prayed, really prayed, that the universe would give her another chance to do something right. When the storm grew quieter near dawn, Jamie realized how exhausted she was. Her hands shook with cold and fatigue. Luna had finally accepted a few bites of food, only after Jamie let the mother see her feed the puppy a drop of honey water. The dog's eyes softened, just a fraction, and she curled around her baby, head pressed close to Jamie's knee. Jamie sat there on the floor, half awake, not daring to move. She didn't know what morning would bring, whether the puppy would make it, whether Luna would stay. But in the hush between the wind and the fire, something fragile took root, a thread of trust, stretched thin but unbroken. She looked at Luna, then at the tiny, battered pup. "I'm going to call you Chance," she whispered, a promise blooming quietly in the dark. "Because that's what you are, a second chance for all of us." As the first pale light crept across the horizon, Jamie realized how close she'd come to losing hope, not just for these animals, but for herself. She remembered the words her mother used to say on nights like this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay when you want to run. Sometimes you have to give trust before you've earned it. Luna let out a soft sigh and laid her head on Jamie's foot. The puppy, Chance, gave a weak wag of his tail. Jamie smiled through her tears. Outside, the storm was finally breaking. Inside, something new was just beginning. The morning arrived pale and gray, with the kind of cold that bit through every crack in the cabin walls. Jamie barely slept, her head heavy and her body cramped from spending the entire night on the floor beside Luna and the puppy. She had drifted in and out of anxious half-dreams, memories of old heartbreaks, flashes of winter roads, and the frail hope that she hadn't been too late. Now, as the fire burned low, reality crept in with the dawn. Chance was barely hanging on. Jamie moved carefully, her muscles aching. The puppy's breaths were thin and ragged, sometimes pausing so long that panic clawed up Jamie's throat. Luna wouldn't leave her baby's side, only lifting her head when Jamie softly called her name. Outside, the wind had eased, but the world was still buried under a foot of new snow. She checked her phone. 1 bar of service, a miracle out here in the wilds of Montana. Her heart pounded as she dialed the nearest veterinary clinic, 15 miles away, in a small town that sometimes felt like another planet. "Dr. Hall, it's Jamie Bennett. I need help. Please, it's urgent." Her voice broke. She explained everything. The highway, the blizzard, the starving mother, the puppy growing weaker by the minute. Dr. Marcus Hall, with his gentle Montana drawl, told her to come right away. "I'll be here, Jamie. Drive safe. Bring them both." Jamie gathered her courage. She wrapped Chance in her thickest sweater, securing him in a cardboard box lined with towels. Luna paced anxiously, whining when Jamie moved too fast. Jamie coaxed Luna into the passenger seat, then cradled the box in her lap, whispering promises she didn't know how to keep. The engine stuttered to life. Every mile felt like a lifetime. The drive was a blur, a world of white and gray, truck tires slipping on icy patches. Jamie's hands trembling with every turn. The heater barely kept up. Luna sat stiffly, never taking her eyes off the box, and when Chance whimpered, she let out a low, mournful sound that stabbed right through Jamie's chest. Jamie talked to them both as she drove. "Just hang on, okay? We're almost there. You're not alone now. I promise I won't let anything happen." The words were for Luna, for Chance, but also for herself. She thought of her old life, one filled with plans and a future that vanished when her fiancé left. She had sworn off getting attached, but here she was, clinging to the hope that she could still save someone, even if she'd failed herself. When they finally reached the clinic, Jamie burst through the door, the wind swirling snow in after her. Dr. Hall was already waiting, tall, steady, his eyes full of quiet kindness. He took one look at the puppy and hustled them into a treatment room. "It's okay, Jamie. Let's see what we can do," he said, gently lifting Chance from the box. Luna whimpered and tried to crawl under a bench, her entire body trembling. Jamie dropped to her knees beside her, arms around Luna's neck, feeling the tension in every muscle. "She's just scared," Jamie whispered. "She's lost everything. Please, do whatever you can." Dr. Hall set to work. The room filled with the soft, urgent sounds of medicine, the beeping of monitors, the rush of oxygen, the whispered prayers of someone who'd seen too much loss and still believed in hope. Jamie watched, helpless, as the vet cleaned Chance's face, checked his heart, started a line for fluids. "He's critical," Dr. Hall said softly, "but he's a fighter. Let's give him a chance." Hours blurred into one long, anxious vigil. Jamie refused to leave the exam room, sitting on the linoleum floor with Luna pressed close. She ran her hands through the dog's matted fur, whispering comfort. In the sterile glow of the clinic, Jamie's own loneliness pressed in, sharper than ever. She remembered nights alone in her cabin. The silence after the life she'd built came crashing down. She'd spent months hiding from pain, refusing to reach out. But now, with Luna shaking beside her and a life hanging in the balance, she realized how much she needed to believe that new beginnings were possible. The hours dragged. Jamie called her mom, voice tight with exhaustion. She texted her only friend in town, leaving a message she barely remembered. Mostly she just sat, eyes never leaving the small glass door that led to the ICU, where Chance lay fighting for every breath. Sometime after noon, Dr. Hall returned. "You want to see him?" he asked quietly. Luna, as if she understood, stood up and pressed her nose to Jamie's hand. They entered the ICU together, the room full of blinking monitors and quiet hope. Dr. Hall crouched beside them, unlocking the small gate. Let her say hello. Sometimes, just having your mom nearby makes all the difference. Luna crept to the puppy's side, nuzzling Chance's face with her cold nose. The puppy's tiny body stirred. For the first time, his heartbeat steadied, his breaths growing a fraction deeper. Jamie watched, tears slipping down her cheeks. It was a miracle, small but real. Luna licked her baby's ears, never taking her eyes off Jamie, as if to say, "Thank you for not giving up." Jamie knelt in the harsh light of the ICU, hands pressed to her mouth, overcome by a feeling she hadn't let herself feel in so long. "Hope," she whispered. "You're not alone. Not anymore. We're a team now." Dr. Hall placed a gentle hand on Jamie's shoulder, reassuring and warm. Evening came. Jamie still refused to leave, pulling a chair into the corner so she could watch both mother and pup through the glass. She opened her journal, a battered notebook she hadn't touched in months, and began to write. "Today I saved a life. Or maybe it saved me. I can't tell the difference right now, but I know I was right to stop." Luna dozed, exhausted but calmer, her body pressed tight to the wall between Jamie and Chance. Every time the puppy whimpered, Luna perked up, touching her nose to the glass. Jamie found herself whispering promises, not just to Luna and Chance, but to herself, that she would not run, not this time. Late that night, Dr. Hall allowed Luna a few minutes inside the ICU again. This time, Luna licked Chance's ears and nose, curling her body protectively around him. The monitors beeped more steadily. Jamie pressed her hand to the glass, and Luna looked at her. Not with fear, but with gratitude and a flicker of trust. In that quiet, antiseptic room, surrounded by machines and the scent of antiseptics, Jamie realized none of them were truly alone anymore. They were broken, battered, and scared. But together, in that small circle of hope, something new had begun to grow. And in the silence between heartbeats, Jamie let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could all find their way home. Snow still blanketed the world in silence as Jamie drove home, her battered truck crawling through slush and ice. The heater was turned all the way up, but the inside of the cab felt warm for another reason. Chance, though still fragile, was alive. Dr. Hall had given Jamie strict instructions and a trembling hope. The puppy needed round-the-clock care, warmth, and a gentle hand. Luna, exhausted but vigilant, wouldn't let her baby out of her sight. They arrived back at the cabin, the landscape still a world of white and shadow. Jamie carried Chance inside first, bundled in a soft towel, his body warmer but still shivering now and then. Luna followed close, her eyes darting to every sound, muscles tensed as if she expected danger to leap from every corner. Jamie gently shut the door behind them and knelt, letting Luna sniff the air and the familiar, comforting scent of wood smoke. Inside, Jamie lowered all her defenses. She wanted Luna and Chance to feel what she'd been missing for months, a sense of shelter, even if it was only 4 wooden walls and a patchwork of hope. She placed Chance in the old dog bed near the fireplace, making sure the fire was stacked high and the cabin toasty. Luna circled the room twice, checking on her puppy, then pausing to watch Jamie with wary, intelligent eyes. It was only mid-morning, but Jamie already felt the weight of a lifetime pressing on her. She settled on the couch with her journal open, pretending to read, but in truth she was watching Luna. Every movement of the dog was tense and measured. She flinched at the crackling of the fire, the thump of boots against the wooden floor. Jamie's heart twisted. She recognized that look, the constant readiness to bolt, to run before anyone could hurt her again. Jamie had lived months that way herself, sleeping with her phone under her pillow, expecting bad news in the middle of the night, waiting for the next abandonment. Slowly, Jamie started talking. She didn't know if Luna understood the words, but she understood the tone, the soft, soothing cadence that mothers use with scared children, and that lonely people use with themselves in the dark. "It's okay, Luna. You're safe here, I promise." She spoke about little things at first: the color of the sky, the cold in the air, the taste of strong coffee on her tongue. When she ran out of small talk, she began to talk about bigger things: the dreams she'd lost, the fear of being alone, the longing to start over. To her surprise, Luna inched closer every time Jamie spoke softly. The distance between them shrank day by day, inch by inch, as if Luna was testing the strength of invisible threads tying her to this new, uncertain place. The first time Luna lay down within reach, Jamie froze, barely daring to breathe. She stretched out a trembling hand, letting Luna sniff her fingers, and when the dog didn't flinch, Jamie felt a pang of wild hope. Every day was a slow dance between trust and old habits. Jamie gave Luna space, never forcing affection. She left food and water where Luna could see, then retreated to the kitchen or couch. Luna always waited until Jamie turned away before she'd eat, but the bowl was always empty by morning. The puppy, now officially named Chance, regained strength little by little. His tail began to wag, his appetite came back, and he even stumbled around the living room, chasing Jamie's sock with clumsy determination. Whenever Chance whimpered, Luna was there instantly, licking his ears, standing guard, never far from his side. Jamie kept her journal close, scribbling notes and confessions. Sometimes she wrote about the dogs, Chance's first wobbly steps, Luna's cautious glances. Other times she wrote about herself, the raw places inside that still ached, the fear that even now, this fragile happiness could be taken away. She wrote about her old life, the heartbreak she couldn't quite leave behind, and the glimmer of hope that was beginning to grow in its place. One day, Jamie took a bold step. She dug out a blue collar from her old box of pet supplies, a collar she'd bought years ago on a whim, with a small mountain-shaped tag that read, "Not all who wander are lost." She knelt beside Luna, holding the collar in both hands, her heart pounding. "I want you to have this," she whispered, voice shaking. "You're not lost anymore. Not if you don't want to be." Luna stared at her, ears flicking. For a long moment, Jamie thought the dog would back away, but instead, Luna sat still as Jamie slipped the collar gently over her neck. The mountain-shaped tag jingled softly. Luna shook herself, the sound echoing through the small cabin, and then, cautiously, rested her head on Jamie's knee. Jamie let herself cry, just a little. She stroked Luna's fur and whispered thank you over and over, as if she were the one being rescued. Chance wriggled into her lap, tumbling against Luna's side, and for the first time in months, Jamie felt a warmth she thought she'd lost forever. Outside, the storm had passed. The world beyond the cabin still looked cold and bleak, but inside something had changed. The old fears were still there. Jamie still woke from nightmares. Luna still barked at sudden noises, and Chance still whimpered in his sleep. But every day, the distance between fear and trust shrank, replaced by the small, stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, they could build something new. Jamie started photographing Luna and Chance, capturing the moments of progress, the tentative tail wags, the way Luna would lie closer to the fire each night, the bright spark of life returning to Chance's eyes. She posted a photo online, telling a small piece of their story, and was surprised by the messages of support from strangers. For the first time, she let herself imagine that healing was possible, not just for the dogs, but for herself as well. She watched as Luna curled up beside Chance, the blue collar shining in the firelight, and she realized that shelter wasn't just a place. It was a feeling, a promise that, even after everything, nobody was truly lost if someone was willing to believe in them. And in that quiet cabin, on a mountain buried in snow, Jamie made another silent vow. She wouldn't give up. Not on Luna, not on Chance, and not on herself. As winter dragged on, each day at the cabin began to feel a little less like a struggle for survival and a little more like the beginning of a new life. Jamie, Luna, and Chance, three lost souls, slowly stitched themselves together into something that resembled family. But it wasn't just the three of them anymore. With each small victory, with every wag of Chance's tail or tentative nuzzle from Luna, Jamie found herself drawn a little closer to the outside world she'd long kept at arm's length. It started with the simple act of sharing their story. One chilly morning, Jamie snapped a photo of Luna and Chance curled together by the fire, their bodies pressed close, the blue collar and mountain-shaped tag glinting in the sunlight. There was something about the way Luna watched her puppy, so protective yet so vulnerable, that made Jamie's own heart ache. She wrote a short post for social media, not expecting much. Rescued this little family from a Montana snowstorm. We're learning to trust each other, one day at a time. Any advice for helping a nervous mama dog settle in? She pressed post and left her phone on the kitchen counter, forgetting about it until that afternoon. When she finally checked, she was stunned. Dozens of messages had poured in. Tips, encouragement, offers to donate food, even heartfelt stories from others who'd rescued animals or been rescued by them. The kindness of strangers made Jamie's world feel a little bigger, a little warmer. One comment in particular caught her eye. "If you need treats, I have some homemade ones. Mrs. Carter, from the library." Jamie smiled. She hadn't been to the small-town library in ages, not since before her breakup. The idea of reconnecting with her old community made her stomach flutter with nerves, but it also sparked something she hadn't felt in months: curiosity. That weekend, Mrs. Carter arrived at the cabin with a plate of peanut butter biscuits shaped like bones and a friendly smile. "I figured you three could use some company," she said, stepping inside and stomping snow from her boots. Luna bristled at first, standing between Mrs. Carter and Chance, but the older woman sat on the floor, talking gently until Luna dared to sniff her hand. "You're a good mama," Mrs. Carter murmured. "The world can be a hard place, but you're safe now." It wasn't just Mrs. Carter who reached out. Eli, the neighbor boy from down the lane, rode his bike through slush one afternoon, clutching a squeaky rubber toy and a worn tennis ball. He stood shyly on the porch until Jamie invited him in. "My mom says you saved those dogs," he said, wide-eyed. "Can I help you teach the puppy to fetch?" Chance, already getting stronger, chased after Eli's thrown ball, his stubby tail wagging in circles. Luna watched with cautious interest, eventually joining in for a few rounds of tug-of-war, her mouth gentle but determined. The more the little family healed, the more Jamie felt her own walls coming down. One evening, she bundled herself, Luna, and Chance in thick jackets and scarves and walked into town together. Snow crunched beneath their boots and paws. People waved from porch swings and shop doors. Children ran up to pet Chance, who basked in the attention, and Luna even let a few brave hands scratch behind her ears. Jamie's heart swelled with pride as Luna didn't flinch away. Instead, she wagged her tail, slow at first, then faster, eyes bright. At the diner, Jamie and her dogs became minor celebrities. The owner, a gruff man with a soft spot for animals, brought them a bowl of water and a plate of leftover bacon. "On the house," he winked. Mrs. Carter waved from a booth. Jamie realized that, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving. She was part of something bigger. She belonged, even if only in small ways. Back at the cabin, life settled into a new rhythm. Chance graduated from sock chasing to racing around the living room, Luna barking in delight as he tumbled over rugs and slipped on the wood floor. Jamie laughed more, finding joy in the simple chaos. She made a point to journal every evening, recording each step forward. Luna accepting a treat from her hand, Chance falling asleep with his head on Jamie's foot. Even the nights when old fears resurfaced. The local animal shelter contacted Jamie, asking if she'd like to bring Luna and Chance for a visit. "Just to meet the other volunteers," they said, "and maybe share your story with people who could use a little hope." Jamie hesitated, her old anxieties prickling. What if Luna regressed? What if Jamie stumbled over her words? Or worse, what if no one cared? But Luna surprised her. On the day of the visit, she climbed into the truck without coaxing and sat calmly beside Chance all the way there. At the shelter, Luna greeted the other dogs with polite interest, and Chance quickly won over the staff with his antics. Jamie told their story to a small group of volunteers, her voice shaking at first, but growing steadier as she talked about the power of second chances. When she finished, there were tears and hugs, and even more offers to help. One of the volunteers, a retired nurse, brought over a hand-knit dog blanket. "For your little family," she said, and Jamie could only nod, too moved to speak. The days grew longer, the snow began to melt, and the world outside the cabin softened. Luna slept closer to Jamie now, sometimes pressed up against her on the couch. Chance would curl in the crook of Jamie's arm, sighing contentedly. The fear that had once lived in all their bones began to fade. Not gone entirely, but overshadowed by love and laughter. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange over the mountains, Jamie found herself standing outside with Luna and Chance at her side. She looked out at the landscape, frosty fields, distant lights from neighboring houses, and realized she was no longer just passing through her own life. She was living it, step by step, surrounded by people and animals who cared. That night, Jamie added a final note to her journal. "Family isn't about blood, or even about where you start. It's about who stands by you when things fall apart, and who helps you put the pieces back together." For the first time since she'd stopped for Luna and Chance on that lonely highway, Jamie truly believed they were going to be okay. The days were growing lighter and the snow receded, but with the melting drifts came a subtle, persistent unease that Jamie could not shake. For a few weeks, everything had seemed almost idyllic, a rhythm of walks through crisp air, the laughter of children tossing balls for Chance, Luna slowly transforming from a wary shadow to a trusted companion who sometimes trotted at Jamie's side with her head held high. The cabin was warm and alive with the sounds of paws on the floor and the happy clutter of a new life. Jamie even began sleeping better, the nightmares of her breakup and the old ache of loneliness slowly fading into background noise. But peace is fragile, and sometimes the past circles back when you least expect it. It started one evening after sundown. Jamie had been cleaning up after dinner. Chance, full of puppy mischief, had managed to tip his water bowl, and Luna barked playfully while Jamie laughed and mopped up the spill. She felt lighter than she had in months, but when she stepped out onto the porch to shake out the rug, she noticed something strange: tire tracks in the fresh mud at the end of her driveway. Jamie's cabin was off a small, seldom-used road, No one should be out here unless they had a reason. Her first reaction was simple curiosity. But as she traced the marks with her flashlight, her stomach twisted. There were two sets, one coming in, one going out, and neither matched her own. They hadn't been there that morning. She checked her phone. No missed calls, no deliveries scheduled, nothing out of the ordinary. Jamie tried to brush it off, but when she locked the door that night, she double-checked every window. That wasn't the end of it. The next morning, as she stepped outside for their walk, Jamie nearly tripped over an envelope propped against the doorframe. The paper was cheap and wrinkled, a single line scrawled across it in black marker. Give her back. There was no signature, no explanation. Just 3 words that cut through the warmth of the past weeks and left Jamie cold all over. Luna must have sensed her alarm. The dog pressed herself against Jamie's leg, hackles raised, her body tense and alert. Jamie read the note twice, hands shaking, then crumpled it and stuffed it into her jacket pocket. She didn't want to frighten Luna or Chance, who was already bounding around the porch in pursuit of a moth. But she couldn't ignore the prickling at the back of her neck. She tried to go about her day as usual, feeding the dogs, answering messages, walking into town to pick up supplies. But everywhere she went, she felt watched. She found herself glancing over her shoulder, looking for unfamiliar cars, checking to see if anyone followed them down the street. Even the friendliness of neighbors seemed somehow sharper, more pointed. Was she imagining things? Or was someone truly out there waiting for the right moment? Jamie confided in Dr. Hall at the vet clinic the next afternoon. She brought Luna and Chance in for a routine checkup, but her voice trembled as she recounted what she'd found. Dr. Hall listened without interrupting, his calm gaze never leaving hers. "It's probably nothing," he said finally, "but it's always better to be safe. I'll talk to a friend on the sheriff's force, just in case. And Jamie, you're not alone. This town takes care of its own." He patted Luna's head, the unspoken promise clear. They would look out for her. Word got around quickly, as it does in small towns. Mrs. Carter stopped by that evening, bringing a basket of muffins and a new chew toy for Chance. "I heard someone's been nosing around," she said, matter of fact. "You let me know if you need anything, dear. My grandson's a deputy. He'll drive by a little more often." She squeezed Jamie's hand, her eyes fierce despite her gentle voice. The next day, Jamie found Eli waiting by her mailbox. The boy shuffled his feet, looking everywhere but at her face. "My dad says I can help keep watch," he said, holding up a walkie-talkie. "I got the good one from our camping trip." Jamie's heart swelled at his bravery and his childish seriousness. She accepted the offer with a grateful smile, promising to call if anything happened. Still, the sense of threat lingered. That night, Luna refused to go outside, barking at every shadow and pacing the length of the cabin, ears up, body coiled tight with worry. Chance, sensing the tension, whimpered and pressed himself into Jamie's lap. Jamie stayed up late, a mug of cold tea forgotten in her hand. The dogs clustered around her feet. Every sound outside seemed amplified. The wind in the trees, the distant hoot of an owl, the crunch of ice shifting as the ground thawed. Jamie's imagination conjured images of someone lurking at the edge of the woods, watching and waiting. Unable to sleep, Jamie scrolled through messages from the online group that had once brought her so much comfort. She posted an update. Someone left a note. "Luna's scared. Any advice for keeping her calm and keeping us safe?" The responses flooded in. Tips for security lights, advice on calming anxious dogs, reminders to trust her instincts. More than a few locals messaged privately, offering to drop by and check in, to walk with her through town, to let her know she wasn't alone. Jamie realized that she'd stumbled into something unexpected, a web of care and concern, stronger than fear. She thought back to the day she'd stopped for Luna and Chance in the snow. How terrifying it had been to risk getting hurt again. Now she saw that courage wasn't just in the big things. It was in letting others stand beside you when the shadows grew long. That weekend, Jamie started a new ritual. Every night, as the last light faded from the sky, she'd stand with Luna and Chance on the porch, watching the trees and the silent road. Sometimes Eli would signal from his window with a flashlight, and Jamie would wave back, grateful for the connection. She kept her phone charged and nearby, ready to call for help if she needed it. But more than that, she drew strength from knowing that a whole community was quietly, steadfastly watching over her and her little family. The threat was still out there, unknown, unnamed, a shadow at the door. But inside, the cabin pulsed with the warmth of love and the fierce determination to protect what mattered. Luna would stand at the window, tail raised, a guardian born of pain, but fueled now by hope. Jamie knew she couldn't erase the past, couldn't guarantee that tomorrow would be safe. But she also knew she wouldn't face it alone. For the first time in years, Jamie let herself trust, not just in her own strength, but in the strength of others. She tucked the crumpled note into her journal as a reminder. Fear could not win, not as long as kindness and community stood together. And in the hush that followed, with Luna pressed against her side and Chance snoring softly at her feet, Jamie looked out at the moonlit snow and felt, for a fleeting moment, utterly safe. The nights in Montana had become lighter, but inside Jamie's cabin, the shadows seemed deeper than ever. Despite the support from neighbors and friends, Jamie's sense of unease never truly disappeared. Each day brought new reminders that fear still lurked at the edge of safety. A snapped twig outside the window, Luna barking at unseen movement in the trees, a sudden pounding of Jamie's heart when a car slowed on the road. Luna grew ever more vigilant, and Chance, sensing the mood, rarely left Jamie's side. There was a sense of something building, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. That Friday evening, Jamie tried to focus on something normal. Curled in her old armchair with a library book, Chance snoring gently at her feet, Luna lying close by, eyes trained on the front door. A soft wind rattled the window panes, but inside it was warm and peaceful, until Luna shot up with a bark so sharp Jamie dropped her book. All at once, everything was tense. Luna's hackles rose, she growled deep in her chest, and even Chance whimpered, pressing against Jamie's legs. Jamie's heart hammered. She reached for her phone, adrenaline making her fingers clumsy. She peered out the front window and froze. In the yellow porch light, a figure emerged from the darkness, moving quickly up the path from the edge of the woods. The silhouette was tall, broad-shouldered, face hidden beneath a hooded coat. Jamie's breath caught. She recognized the way this person moved, not like a neighbor or friend, but with anger, with purpose. She remembered Dr. Hall's advice. Document everything. Don't open the door. Stay calm. Her hands shook as she switched on the phone's camera and started recording, voice barely steady as she called out, "Who's there?" Luna placed herself between Jamie and the door, body tense, teeth bared but trembling. The man didn't answer at first. Instead, he stepped into the full glare of the porch light, his face visible for a split second. Hard lines, angry eyes, unmistakable threat. "I'm here for what's mine," he said in a low, rough voice. "That dog belongs to me. Give her back or you'll regret it." He glared at Luna, who shrank back but refused to leave Jamie's side. Jamie took a breath, forcing steel into her voice. "The police are on their way. Leave now, or you'll only make things worse for yourself. She pressed the emergency text she'd prepared to Eli, who had promised to keep an eye out with Mrs. Carter and the neighbors. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but her focus stayed on Luna, who was now barking, half in fear, half in warning. For a moment, time stood still. The man slammed his hand against the glass, rattling the door. Luna leaped up, barking frantically, body quivering. Jamie nearly dropped her phone but kept it pointed at the man, determined to get his threats on video. She prayed Eli had seen her text, that help was on the way, but fear gnawed at her resolve. Then, through the darkness, came a beam of flashlight and the sound of voices. Eli's high and anxious, Mrs. Carter's steady and reassuring. "Jamie, are you okay? The police are coming." The voices rang out through the trees. The intruder hesitated, glancing over his shoulder, suddenly aware he was no longer alone. Red and blue lights swept through the trees, painting the snow and porch in dizzying color. Sirens broke the silence, drawing closer, louder, more urgent. The man made a split-second decision to run, but the police were faster. 2 officers tackled him before he could disappear into the woods. There was shouting, scuffling, Luna's frantic barking. And then, just like that, it was over. Jamie's knees buckled as the adrenaline drained away. She slid to the floor, clutching Chance, sobs shaking her shoulders. Luna, panting and still on edge, crept over and, for the first time ever, pressed her head gently into Jamie's hands. Jamie stroked Luna's ears, barely able to believe what had just happened. The dog who once flinched from every touch was now seeking comfort. From her, for her. The officers confirmed what Jamie already suspected. The man was the same individual who had been investigated for animal cruelty in the county. He was now in custody for trespassing, threats, and abuse. Dr. Hall arrived soon after, along with a cluster of concerned neighbors. Eli stood with wide, worried eyes until Jamie pulled him into a grateful hug. Mrs. Carter wrapped Jamie in her arms and whispered, "You're not alone, sweetheart. This whole town stands with you." Jamie looked around at the faces in the lamplight. Dr. Hall, Eli, Mrs. Carter, other neighbors from the town. She felt the truth of Mrs. Carter's words settle into her bones, solid and real. The fear wasn't gone, but it had changed shape, overshadowed by the knowledge that she was no longer isolated. When the officers finished their questions and the crowd dispersed, Jamie, Luna, and Chance finally returned to the quiet of the cabin. That night, for the first time, Luna curled up close to Jamie, pressing her body against Jamie's side as if to say, "I trust you now." Chance sprawled out on the pillow, paws twitching in sleep. Outside, the world was dark and silent, but inside, the 3 of them were wrapped in a cocoon of safety and hard-won peace. Before drifting off, Jamie whispered, "You protected me, Luna, and I promise I'll always protect you." Luna licked Jamie's hand, eyes full of trust. No more barriers, no more hiding from each other or the world. Just love, hope, and a bond forged in fire. Somewhere down the road, a patrol car's siren faded into the night. But in Jamie's cabin, the battle was over. They had faced the darkness together and come through stronger for it. It wasn't just courage that saved them. It was community. It was trust. And it was love. In all its complicated, messy forms, dawn crept softly over the Montana foothills, spilling gentle light across Jamie's cabin and melting the frost from the windows. It felt like the world itself was breathing easier after the storm of the night before. For the first time in months, Jamie woke not to anxiety, but to the quiet warmth of Luna curled against her legs and Chance sprawled out, a tangle of ears and paws, snoring lightly on her pillow. There was a peace in the cabin that went beyond silence. It was the peace of survival, of fear finally giving way to hope. That morning, as Jamie made coffee and filled Luna and Chance's bowls, her phone buzzed with messages. Neighbors checking in, Mrs. Carter asking if she needed anything, Dr. Hall offering to stop by with a celebratory treat. The entire town seemed to be breathing a collective sigh of relief. Even Luna seemed to sense it. She walked the cabin with her tail up, sniffing the air as if she were exploring a new home. Later that day, 2 officers returned to the cabin to let Jamie know the man who had threatened them would be facing multiple charges, including animal cruelty and trespassing. "You did everything right," one of them told Jamie, "and you weren't alone. This community rallied for you. That's what matters." Jamie nodded, her heart full to the brim with gratitude. She realized then how far she'd come from the woman who once thought she had to face everything alone. A week after that harrowing night, Jamie received a visit from Dr. Hall. He carried with him not just a bag of treats, but a stack of adoption papers. "It's official, Jamie. Luna and Chance can be yours, in every way that matters." Jamie's hands shook as she signed the documents. The moment she clicked the pen shut, Luna sat at her feet, as if she knew her fate had changed for the better. Chance leapt up, wagging his entire body in joy. Jamie hugged them both, tears stinging her eyes, not of sadness but of relief, and a happiness so fierce it almost hurt. To celebrate, Jamie decided to throw a small backyard party, a thank you to everyone who had stood by her side, a welcome to Luna and Chance's new life. On a golden Saturday afternoon, the yard buzzed with laughter and the hum of voices. Jamie set up tables with homemade lemonade, cookies, and big bowls of dog treats. Eli and his friends brought over toys and leashes, chasing Chance through the grass as he darted between legs and picnic blankets. Luna, in her new blue collar with the mountain tag, sat regally near the porch, accepting pats and treats with dignified gratitude. Neighbors brought their own dogs, and soon the yard became a parade of wagging tails and joyful barking. Mrs. Carter arrived with a basket of her famous dog biscuits, and Dr. Hall manned the grill, flipping burgers and telling stories about the old days. At one point, someone suggested a game of tug-of-war between the dogs. Luna surprised everyone by joining in, tail wagging, eyes shining with a kind of happiness Jamie had never seen in her before. Every so often, Luna would circle back to Jamie's side, lean in for a reassuring scratch behind the ears, and then trot back out to play. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, Jamie stood on the porch, looking out over the party. It struck her how much had changed. There was a time not so long ago when she couldn't imagine letting people this close, into her life, into her home, into her heart. But now her world was full of warmth, friends, laughter, community, and a family that had come together by chance and by choice. That night, as the party ended and guests drifted home, Jamie sat beneath the stars with Luna and Chance curled beside her. The fire pit glowed with embers, casting a gentle light over their faces. Jamie wrapped an arm around Luna and whispered, "You're home now, for good. Nothing will ever change that." Luna nuzzled Jamie's hand, then settled her head in Jamie's lap. Chance burrowed into her side with a satisfied sigh. In the weeks that followed, Jamie found herself drawn further into the life of the community. She and Luna began volunteering at the animal shelter, helping other dogs adjust to new beginnings. Luna, now officially a therapy dog, had a natural way of calming the most anxious of animals, and even a few nervous volunteers. Jamie was asked to share her story with new volunteers, and though she was nervous at first, she found her voice. She spoke about fear, about second chances, about the courage it takes to open your heart again. Luna and Chance became local celebrities. Children would run up to pet them on walks through town, and neighbors waved whenever Jamie passed by. The sense of belonging deepened with each new day. At the local library, Mrs. Carter arranged for Jamie to speak to a group of schoolchildren. Jamie brought Luna and Chance, who stole the show by sitting calmly as dozens of tiny hands stroked their fur. Jamie watched the children's faces, some shy, some laughing, all full of wonder, and realized that her story had become something bigger. It was a lesson about kindness, about risk, about how the smallest act of compassion can change not just one life, but many. One rainy afternoon, as Jamie journaled in her favorite chair, Luna curled up on the rug and Chance dozed beside the fire. She reflected on all they had survived. There were still scars, moments when Luna flinched at thunder, or Jamie woke from a nightmare. But now those scars were reminders of how far they'd come. They were no longer defined by fear, but by resilience and love. Jamie closed her journal and smiled, feeling the quiet presence of Luna and Chance. Her family, her heart, her home. In the peace of that evening, with the rain tapping gently against the windows and the comfort of her dogs beside her, Jamie knew that this was only the beginning. The worst was over, and a new chapter, full of hope, laughter, and endless second chances, had just begun. Spring crept quietly into Montana, bringing with it new growth and a gentle warmth that thawed not only the earth, but something deep inside Jamie's heart. The snow was long gone, replaced by the soft green of new grass and the wildflowers that dotted the fields outside her cabin. Jamie, Luna, and Chance had survived the storm, both the one outside and the one within. But even as life settled into a gentler rhythm, Jamie found herself drawn to quiet moments of reflection, seeking to understand just how far they had come and what it all truly meant. One Sunday morning, Jamie sat on the porch with her journal, watching the sunlight flicker through the trees. Luna lay at her feet, head resting on Jamie's boot, while Chance chased butterflies across the yard. Jamie turned a page and started to write, letting her thoughts spill out without filter. "I never imagined how much a single act of compassion could change everything," she wrote. "I stopped on that snowy road thinking I was helping a dog and her puppy. But in truth, I was the one who needed saving. I thought I was bringing them home. Instead, they brought me back to life." The past months replayed in Jamie's mind. Their first night together, Chance's battle for survival at the vet, Luna's gradual transformation from fearful and skittish to trusting and even playful. Jamie recalled every setback, every victory. The time Luna first took food from her hand, the first night both dogs curled up beside her without fear, the day Jamie realized her heart had finally opened again. Healing, Jamie realized, wasn't something that happened all at once. It was slow, uneven, sometimes painful, and full of small victories and setbacks. There were still days when Luna startled at loud noises, and nights when Jamie woke up from dreams of loss, or found herself doubting whether she truly belonged in this new, hopeful life. But the progress was undeniable. Luna's tail wagged more freely, Chance's confidence grew every day, and Jamie found herself smiling for no reason, caught off guard by her own happiness. The most profound lesson, Jamie knew, was about trust. She had spent so long guarding herself against disappointment, expecting the worst from people and circumstances. It took time and courage to let others in, to risk loving and being loved. Watching Luna learn to trust again reminded Jamie that true strength came from vulnerability, from allowing herself to lean on others and to admit her fears. Each time Luna pressed close, seeking comfort, Jamie felt the old walls inside her crumble a little more. Community, too, played a vital role in their journey. Jamie often thought back to that night when the threat came to her door, the way Eli, Mrs. Carter, Dr. Hall, and the other neighbors came together, forming a shield of support around her and the dogs. She was reminded that, for all its quirks and gossip, a small town could be a fortress when it mattered most. Jamie learned to accept help, to reach out instead of retreating, and to believe that belonging was something that could be built one act of kindness at a time. Her story, and Luna and Chance's, spread through the town and even beyond. A local journalist wrote an article about their journey, sharing not only the fear and hardship, but the incredible resilience and hope that came out of it. Jamie was asked to speak at the animal shelter and at the library, sharing her story with volunteers, children, and anyone who needed to hear that recovery was possible. Every time she spoke, Jamie saw the truth reflected in the eyes of her audience. Everyone, at some point, has been lost, afraid, or in need of a second chance. Jamie's journal became a kind of roadmap to healing. She filled pages with memories, lessons, and promises to herself and to her small family. She wrote about patience, the slow trust building with Luna, the careful way Chance explored the world. She wrote about risk, how stopping on that highway could have brought pain, but instead brought purpose and connection. And she wrote about community, the power of people coming together, the safety found in shared burdens. One entry read, "Healing takes time and patience. There will always be scars for all of us. But every day that Luna flinches a little less, every time Chance races across the yard without fear, every laugh I share with a friend, I know we are moving forward. We are not what happened to us. We are what we choose to become." Jamie learned that family wasn't just about blood or paperwork. It was about who shows up for you, who stands with you in the dark, who laughs with you in the sun. She saw it in the way the town looked out for her, in Mrs. Carter's endless baked goods, in Eli's watchful courage, in Dr. Hall's steady reassurance. Family was chosen, built moment by moment through care, forgiveness, and shared experience. On evenings when doubt tried to creep back in, Jamie would sit by the fire with Luna and Chance, letting the warmth soak into her bones. She remembered the times she'd felt utterly alone, and how that loneliness had lifted, little by little, through the simple magic of love. Messy, imperfect, stubborn love that refused to give up. Looking at Luna and Chance, Jamie saw that she wasn't the only one who had changed. Luna, once a trembling stray, now stood proud and strong, her eyes bright with trust. Chance, who had nearly died on a cold winter night, was now the darling of the neighborhood, full of joy and curiosity. Their journey together was living proof that compassion, especially the inconvenient, brave kind, could reshape the future. Jamie closed her journal and reached for Luna, who nudged her hand and looked up with complete trust. "We saved each other," Jamie whispered, "and we're never going back." That night, as the stars scattered across the vast Montana sky, and the soft sounds of Luna and Chance sleeping filled the cabin, Jamie finally understood. It wasn't just about survival or even about healing. It was about learning to let go, to open up, and to trust yourself, others, and the possibility of happiness again. And as spring turned into summer, Jamie, Luna, and Chance stepped forward into a world bright with promise, carrying with them the quiet, unbreakable lessons of trust, courage, and community. By the time summer rolled across the valley, the hardships of winter seemed like another lifetime. Jamie's cabin brimmed with light and laughter. The pain and fear that once lingered in every corner of her life had faded, replaced by something steadier and deeper, a sense of belonging, and a newfound mission that stretched far beyond her own little family. It started with a letter from the principal at the local elementary school. She wanted Jamie, Luna, and Chance to visit the third-grade class for a special lesson about kindness, courage, and caring for animals. Jamie hesitated at first. She had never thought of herself as a public speaker, and the idea of standing in front of a classroom filled with curious faces was daunting. But Luna, now officially certified as a therapy dog, seemed to sense her nerves. Whenever Jamie practiced telling their story aloud, Luna sat close, her presence a calming anchor. So one bright Monday, Jamie found herself leading Luna and Chance through the hallways of the school, past colorful bulletin boards and the delighted squeals of children. In the classroom, Luna calmly lay at Jamie's feet, her blue collar and mountain-shaped tag catching the sunlight. Chance, already a favorite among the kids, wagged his tail and allowed small hands to pet his soft ears. Jamie shared their journey, the frozen highway, the moment she stopped, the long road to trust and healing. She told the children how scared she had been, not just of the storm and the unknown, but of being vulnerable, of risking her heart again. The room was silent as she described Luna's transformation from a trembling stray into a loyal, loving companion. How Chance, once so fragile, now brought joy wherever he went. When she finished, hands shot into the air, kids eager to share their own stories, to ask questions about animals and courage and what to do if you see someone in need. Afterward, Jamie watched as the shyest child in the room approached Luna, her fingers trembling. "I'm scared of dogs," the little girl whispered, "but maybe Luna could be my friend." Luna, as if understanding, gently pressed her head into the girl's hands. The child's face lit up, and Jamie felt tears prick her eyes. That simple act, a moment of trust, a first step, was proof of just how far they had all come. Jamie's story began to ripple outwards. The local newspaper ran a feature on Luna's work as a therapy dog, and the story was shared on social media, inspiring people far beyond the town's borders. Jamie was invited to visit more schools, libraries, and even the animal shelter, where she encouraged others to consider adoption, to be brave enough to stop and to open their hearts. But the biggest changes were at home. In the subtle, everyday ways, kindness took root and spread. Mrs. Carter started organizing community bake sales to raise funds for stray animals, roping in Eli and his friends as helpers. Dr. Hall led workshops on animal care and rescue, and more families in the area began fostering or adopting pets. Eli, who had once stood guard outside Jamie's cabin with his walkie-talkie, became known as the neighborhood dog whisperer. The sense of watchfulness and care that had saved Jamie and her dogs now wove itself into the fabric of the town, a legacy born from one act of compassion on a lonely winter road. At the animal shelter, Jamie noticed a shift. More people volunteered. Fewer dogs lingered in the kennels. Children read stories to the animals, just as Jamie had read to Luna and Chance that first anxious night. The ripple effect was real. Kindness begot kindness. Courage inspired courage. And every small action made the world just a little softer, a little safer. Back at home, Jamie continued her nightly journaling. She wrote not only for herself, but for Luna and Chance, and for the people she met along the way who needed to believe that hope was still possible. One entry, written on a quiet evening as fireflies blinked outside her window, read, "The world is full of lost and broken things, but also full of people willing to stop and help. If you ever wonder whether kindness matters, remember Luna. One moment of compassion changed everything, for her, for Chance, and for me. Never underestimate the power of stopping, listening, and loving when no one else will." Sometimes Jamie would reread her earlier entries and marvel at how far they'd come. Luna, who still startled at thunder, now greeted strangers with calm dignity, wearing her therapy dog badge with pride. Chance, once so frail, was a whirlwind of energy, comforting any child who seemed afraid, teaching others how healing could be found in the simplest forms of connection. Jamie found herself no longer afraid of new beginnings. Each day brought unexpected joy, a handwritten thank you from a child, a stranger who stopped to share their own rescue story, a neighbor who found courage to adopt an abandoned dog. Jamie realized that the legacy she and her dogs were building was not just about second chances, but about inspiring others to take their own leaps of faith. On the anniversary of that fateful night, Jamie organized a picnic for friends, neighbors, and all the shelter volunteers. The cabin yard was filled with laughter, children running barefoot through the grass, dogs napping in the shade, and the smells of summer drifting on the breeze. Jamie raised a toast, lemonade in hand, to kindness, to family, and to the ripple effect of stopping for a stranger's hope. As the sun set behind the mountains, Jamie sat quietly with Luna's head in her lap and Chance curled at her feet. She watched the fireflies dance above the field and listened to the peaceful sounds of a community forever changed by compassion. She knew that her story was only one of many, but it was proof that anyone, at any time, could choose to be the person who stops, who cares, who risks a little vulnerability for the chance to make the world softer for someone else. Jamie smiled to herself, grateful for every twist of fate that brought her here, and whispered, "Sometimes, saving someone else is the first step in saving yourself." And in that moment, under a sky full of stars, Jamie knew that kindness, once given, never truly ends. It ripples outward, touching lives seen and unseen, creating families, communities, and futures built not on fear, but on hope, courage, and love.